Hello everyone, I'm Tim from Tim's PC and I build custom PCs to suit anyone's needs or budget. Also live stream my builds and repairs for transparency and educational purposes. So if you would like to get an awesome new PC and you'd like to see it put together live, send me a message today. Alrighty, so tonight we're going to be building Shane's PC. So Shane messaged me a few days ago and he's actually the owner of a post office down in South Australia, so he doesn't have to go far to receive his PC, that's for sure. So yeah, he came to me, we put together a capable PC that's going to allow him to do whatever gaming he wants to do and is a good workstation for him at work. So I'll go through the components quickly and we'll get straight into it. So we've got the MSI Z690 Pro A Wi-Fi motherboard. This is a pretty good board. It's got quad M2 slots, just like the board from last night. We've got 32 gigabytes of, sorry, is it 32 or is it 64? I can't remember. Oh, dropping it. No, it is 32 gigabytes. Sorry, I've done another quote that's very, very similar for someone who's after one for, I'm just going to pick these up, for audio engineering. And I did him a quote for 64. He wants everything absolutely top spec. So I was like, well, you know, I'll sell you that, and then, you know, even if you have to sell it in a few years, the fact that it's got 64 gigabytes of RAM, someone will pick that up and put it to work one way or the other. So anyway, for our CPU here, we've got the Intel i9 12900K here, and so this is the one that's got the special edition box. They were on special at the same price that the basically the ones that aren't in this box cost. So I thought I'd pick this one up mainly just for show here, because it's got a really cool inside, and I'll show people that and explain it a little bit more when we unbox it. As discussed, we've got an RTX 3080. This is one of the 12 gigabyte VRAM versions of the card. We've also got two M.2 1 terabyte SSDs. We've got an 850 watt power supply here. We've got a Corsair Elite Capilex cooler with a 360mm one, and we've got an Antec D600 Flux case to put it all in. And I think we can probably chuck in another Corsair fan here for the back, so we don't have this plain black one here. I reckon we can do that. Let's chuck that in up the top. Alrighty, and that's all of the specs here for this build. So we may as well get straight into it, because I'm pretty keen to show people this the special edition packaging. Okay. So is my knife still around here? Possibly not. So it looks like back here, yeah. Oh, what did we get? Mainly Easter Bunny Christine, I think, and she bought some Kit Kat. What was it, Kit Kat Easter eggs or something? Yeah. Alrighty, so this is the packaging that it comes in. So alrighty, have a look at this. So if you're unfamiliar, if this doesn't look like anything in particular to you, I'll tell you what it actually is. This is meant to be a silicon wafer. So a silicon wafer is the actual piece of silicon that they cut the CPUs out of. And if we look really closely at the design here, we'll see that it's a roughly rectangular shape. And sorry, yeah, it's roughly a rectangular shape, and you can see how there's this little area at the top there that's like in its own little area, and then there's the rest of the CPU kind of there. That is what I believe is in reference to the big little design. The other little notch there, I believe, is to reference the cache on the CPU. Correct me if I'm wrong, but essentially if you look up a silicon wafer, and especially CPU production, this will make a lot more sense to you. And so we should just open it up there, and we've got our 12900K. So very, very fancy. Like I said, I normally don't pay extra for things like this, but when they go on special and I can get something like this at the same price, I'm just like, oh yeah, why not? May as well pick it up. I'm sure the people will like seeing it on the live stream, as long as my customer doesn't have to pay more for like nothing. I'm cool. Christine's like, I'm keeping the box. I'm like, yeah, I don't think Shane's really gonna mind. Shane, like, I mean, we're gonna be shipping this all down to him with a keyboard all in the one cart, and I probably don't have room to package up the box properly for you. I'd have to like dismantle the box just to fit it in. I'd have to flatten it to even try to fit it. And yeah, what have we got in here? We do have an I/O shield for this board, and we do have Wi-Fi antennae. We don't need the SATA cables, but I will include I'll include SATA cables here for Shane, so he can add whatever other drives that he wants to. This case here can hold a whole heap of SATA devices, and I'll show you how that works. Alrighty. So this is the board. It's very similar. It's very similar to the board from last night in terms of its specs. So, as I said, it's got the 4 M2 slots, dual channel memory. It's got a whole heap of fan headers. It's got USB 3, everything you can expect. 6 SATA ports in total. It's got 2 places to connect USB 3. Also got the 2 USB 2 headers there as well. Yeah, without going through a deep dive like we did on last night's board, that's the main kind of features there. Everything else is roughly the same. It's got 2 X4 slots down the bottom here and just 1 X1 slot. The other one had an actual X4 slot and then 1 X4 that was X16 length. These are both the X4 that are X16 length. So if you look inside the socket there, I'm not sure if you can see it sort of glistening in the light there, you can see that the pins are only connected 1/4 of the way along in those 2 black slots there. So even though it's the same length as that top silver one, only that top silver one's connected all the way along. So you have to have your graphics card plugged into that top one. Very, very important there. Alrighty, well, let's get started. And I think because I've already opened up the CPU, I think it'd be natural for me to start by plugging in our CPU to the motherboard here. Yeah.
Jack Scorpion says, wait, where is your microphone? Is it near your cup?
My cup? Is it echoey or something?
Mine might be freaking out that it's near water.
No, it's not. It's not near my cup. Yeah. Oh, look, I don't even want to talk about prices of graphics cards at the moment because it's pretty dynamic at the moment. So there was a bit of a fire sale there for a while. So there's some people who got some really good deals on 3080s for like $1,300, $1,200 and stuff like that. So they were a thing, but you know they don't last forever. So the reason is because I think Nvidia is planning on just doing the 12 gigabyte 3080s. See, I'm not sure. We don't. It's a lot of speculation at this stage because we don't know exactly what 40 series is going to look like, and we don't know exactly how 40 series is going to change 30 series, if that makes sense. So they're gonna be. It's not like they're gonna do a 40 series. There's not going to be a 4050 as far as I know. They're gonna release the 40 series, and they're gonna be like high end cards. They're going to be very high powered, and they're going to be very, very expensive. That's what we do know. And my understanding is 30 series will be sold alongside it. However, I don't know what reviews they are going to make to 30 series at this stage. The reviews will probably be on the higher end, so they'll probably be less less availability on the GA102 GPUs. That is the 3080, 3080 Ti, 3090, 3090 Ti. Because my guess is they'll sort of try to wind them up and focus more on the 40 series SKUs in that place. But, that is me speculating. So, we have to wait and see what Nvidia actually releases. We can't just go, oh, whatever, this is what I think is going to happen. Yeah. No, not for gaming and stuff like that. It's for mining, absolutely, but yeah, not for gaming. That was the whole idea of LHR, is how can we prevent the miners from scalping all the cards. Because, randomly I get accused from people of, they're like, oh, people like businesses like you are scalping all the cards and creating the graphics card situation right now. And it's like, dude, if you knew anything about me and my business, you'd know that I'm not one of the ones that are scalping the graphics cards.
No, the people that you find on, Marketplace, etc.
Yeah.
Scalpers.
Yeah, usually.
Some of them are second hand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I might have all this stuff in the background, but if you caught the live stream where I actually set all this shit up in the background, you'd know it's all empty boxes. So it looks pretty cool, but that's just a product of me building PCs for people. So I don't hoard all this stock in the background just to look pretty. That's not what I do. Like most businesses, if they have a shop front and a display of things like computer parts, it's very rarely it's actually full boxes of stuff on the shop floor. Like go into a place like Umart or wherever. Anyone with a shop floor, most of the time they don't have full boxes just sitting there on the shop floor waiting for someone to run in and run out. That's just that's retail 101 right there. Okay, so yeah, it's very common. Most stores and most shops, when they have a display of some sort, and I consider this to be a form of display, they don't use actual, legitimate stock that they've paid for and stuff like that. See, my business model is I just work closely with local retailers and wholesalers to get the best price on particular components, and I pick up parts multiple times a week for PC builds and repairs and upgrades and all that kind of stuff, and I just get the best price that I can in the market. Because I'm just one person, there's a limit to how many PCs I can build in a week, right? So what happens is for some things I can get them cheaper at one place than another place, and it's all based on the volume that you do and stuff like that. Yeah, it's a very interesting and dynamic industry, how it all kind of plays out. If you've got a lot of scale, then you can get a lot better pricing. So that's kind of how it works. So for me, I don't do enough volume in PC parts to get enough like good pricing on parts to bother even adding margin to it. I make money off the service, not the parts. So if anyone is, interested in like what I do and what I don't do, I don't scalp parts. The sorts of things that I stock up on are common motherboards, common CPUs, common CPU coolers, common power supplies, common cases, things like that. I'll buy strategically when I can get good deals on things and stuff like that. But yeah, graphics cards, high dollar value, heavily like fluctuating type of thing. Yeah, I typically stay away from that. It's a little bit too high risk for me with the volume that I do. If I was four of me, then I'd be like, oh yeah, I could probably, take some calculated risks there, but it's just not worth it. I'm one guy. I can only do so much in a day, right? Okay. So we have a few of these RGB fans here, and we have another one that I'm going to donate. This is a high-end PC. It's not an extra fan that I paid for, that's the thing. It's an extra fan that was a spare from, I think wasn't it Aaron's? Yeah, I think Aaron, he got all the QL, he got all the QL fans with his, and he got the same cooler as this. So I just ended up with 3 spare Corsair fans. So it's a perfect opportunity to use the free fan. What's up? Don't have to don't pronounce don't.
Hey Tim, have you built any system recently with 3080 Ti GPU? I was wondering about some good CPU to go along with it.
Well, yeah. When it comes to gaming, you don't necessarily need to get like the i9 or something like that. Sure, it'll have the highest gaming performance, on the benchmarks and stuff. But what you got to understand with CPU gaming benchmarks and stuff is there's a point of diminishing return and stuff. So basically, by the time you're getting to like a Ryzen 5600X kind of level, that's where it starts to really sort of taper off as to how much of a difference that it does make. But if you are chasing like some ridiculously high frame rate at a consistent rate, like running a 360 hertz monitor or something like that, definitely look at the high-end CPUs. But if you're just looking at a general CPU to pair with your 3080 Ti, just for general gaming and stuff like yourself, in the sort of games that you would typically play, like Call of Duty or whatever, and up to like 240 frames a second, Ryzen 5 5600X and above is really all you need to think about. And that would be, I think you could put the i5 12600KF in that group as a minimum sort of performance there as well, I would say. So as long as you've got a CPU that's half decent, if you don't need the extra cores, look at the lower end ones, because it's not worth it to get like 2-3 extra frames per second in a game and pay like $400 extra for the CPU. So hopefully that sort of makes a little bit of sense there. That's why you'll see, high-end PCs that'll still have like something like a Ryzen 5 5600X with a 3080 or 3080 Ti, and you might think, oh, is that a bit of a sacrifice of the CPU? And the answer is only a very, 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 very slight sacrifice, and it's made the price so much better. And so for the average person, it's totally fine. All right, so I don't need TR4. I don't need AM4. Yeah.
When you go to make it to junior to share the work. You can teach the cat how to do it.
Oh, Jesus. Make a Tim Jr. Oh, that'd be... Fuck, man.
You don't want that.
You don't know me well enough.
Wait, Tim.
Yeah.
All the coding for my mouse is literally
Yeah, well, I bought you that because it was cheap and on special. Do you know how much I paid for your mouse and keyboard?
Do I want to know?
I paid $37 for it.
Oh, fuck off. No wonder why it's peeling away. You need to buy me a new mouse and keyboard too. It's like, that's a you problem. I got you started.
Alrighty. So fortunately, with that Corsair backplate, it has slidable little bolt holes there. So even though it might not say on the box that it's compatible with LGA 1700, with a little bit of fine movement there, you can make it fit perfectly fine, because LGA 1700 sits between the LGA 1200 and the LGA 2011 positions. So the furthest out position is the 2011 position. So you've got to get it in between the 1200, which is all the way in and all the way out. So that's all you got to do with the Corsair ones. You'll see online there are plenty of kits to convert various coolers mounting brackets to this. I haven't had to buy any yet, just because I've got a lot of different mounting brackets and stuff, and I can usually find one that's compatible. I had one bad experience where basically I what was it? I had a CPU bracket that fit, and it bolted down seemingly fine, and it looked like it was mounted well, but turned out it was about 0.5 millimeter too high, and the cooler was basically not making contact with the CPU. So the CPU was overheating. I saw that pretty quickly and then had to do some surgery on it. So that's the risk that I run, making use of what I've got. Yeah. Look, it's about... Look, if you consider the difference between a 3080 and a 3090 is between like 15 and 18%.
What would be better, 1440p 3080 Ti or
Yeah.
3080?
Absolutely. 3080 Ti, it'll be about 10% or so faster than the 3080. At 1440p. Just to give you a bit of an idea there of where where it sort of sits. So it's a lot, it's a fair bit of extra money usually, certainly with prices as I've seen them like in the last couple of days. So yeah, is it worth it? I don't know. Only you can answer that question because value is in the eye of the beholder, essentially. Alrighty, so as for our block, I'm thinking the position that it's in is going to be fine. We're going to mount it something like that. Alright, yes. There's a very slight variance in the fans. It must be a refresh model. One of them has a little thing around the Corsair logo, and the other one doesn't. They're both the same spec fans. They have the same blades on them. The casing is slightly different, so we'll make sure that we use the ones that come with the cooler with our cooler. And yeah, just so I don't fucking make a mistake, it's going to go on like that, so I need the cables to come out this direction here. Alright. What do you got for me, Corsair? Whole heap of things for me to pick up with a magnet later. Yeah. Hey Peter, how you going? This thing here, yeah. So basically, your CPU cooler is what we call an all-in-one liquid cooler, and a lot of people misunderstand liquid cooling a bit because the reason for the liquid is so we can have a bigger radiator, and so we can actually mount the radiator like what we're going to do in this case. We're going to be mounting this to the top of the case. So all of the heat that's coming off the CPU is going to be expelled directly out the top of our case. So we're not going to be having heat from the CPU sort of radiating back into the case like with a traditional air tower cooler. So that's fundamentally why we do the liquid cooling. It's not about liquid. The liquid is just a vector of heat transfer between the CPU and the radiator, because obviously we are mounting these fans to the radiator. Yeah. Ah, thanks, man. Appreciate it. Yeah, I'm just one of those tiny little channels. I don't get paid for YouTube. I don't get paid for doing the lives. It's just what I do on Facebook. Facebook's where I do the core of my business.
Wait, babe.
Yeah.
What is the most spent on a PC with you?
Oh, that would have been the $10,000 plus high-end desktop for the 5 times projector to work in uni. Yeah, so there was a guy, he was like a event manager guy, and part of what he wanted to offer was, it's for like road shows and stuff, if you know what a road show is. A road show is like an industry event where like all of the big players in the industry sort of like come together and they do like, it's like the ECA, but for business.
Like they do like tech.
Like I worked in the FMCG industry for over a decade, right? And I've been to a few road shows and stuff for the industry, and I'll tell you this: you think tobacco, right? Tobacco companies can't really advertise in Australia. They can't even have like pictures on their packets and stuff in this market, but one place that they can promote their products is at the trade shows. And probably the most extravagant stall that I saw at one of the road shows. I think it was BAC, British American Tobacco Company, or whatever they call themselves. I can't remember their acronym. One of the big tobacco companies, right? And they had, while everyone else at the trade show had just modest sort of one level stalls, the tobacco company had a multi-level thing. It was 2 stories, and it was lined with actual full-grown tobacco plants, real tobacco plants that are about, I don't know, about a meter or so tall.
Like pots
In yeah, no, it wasn't even pots. It was like in like a, they were growing out of like part of the wall that lined the edge of the building, sort of like.
No.
They were like,
Oh, they would have been in pots.
they would have been in pots,
shoved
yeah, yeah.
through.
But it didn't look. It didn't look like it wasn't.
Oh,
It
that
didn't
would
look
have
like
been actually
pots.
kind of like
Oh, it was beautiful. It was absolutely
Why don't you
beautiful.
take photos
I
of
I
it?
I, I
It's
don't
all about it all the time, and you're like,
I don't want to. When you're at an event like this, right? You don't want to be one of those guys that's like out there just taking photos and stuff like that. You're trying to be professional and represent the company
Yeah,
that you're with. You don't want to be the one taking photos of stuff. Like I was always like, yeah, okay, let's. You would have done it, and some people were, but that was just me and the way I was. I was just like, no, that don't do that. Don't be that guy.
Well,
Let's just-
taking photos of everything.
Let's just keep the business face on. Nothing really impresses me that much, kind of thing. Like, let's just keep it serious.
CEO hat on.
Yeah, let's just be 100% business, right? Let's not get all carried away. Even though we think something's cool, I'm not gonna like go all crazy about it like while I'm at work, right? But yeah, that's the sort of shit that they can do, like when there's actually no rules applied to them and stuff. So, and that is what it's like at those events, because it's a private event. It's not open to the public, so they can get away with stuff. I'm going to be very careful. Tray that was covering the CPU block. It's now the tray for the bolts. So as I was saying last night, one of the things about mounting these CPU coolers, any sort of CPU cooler, whether it's an air tower cooler or an all-in-one liquid cooler or anything, right? The thing that's important is nice, even mounting pressure. So if you want to be a real hardcore nerd about it, and you want to make sure every point of a degree is accounted for, either get really familiar with your own sort of strength and how much torque you're applying with a screwdriver, or actually get the torque wrench out, a little mini torque wrench, and apply an exact amount of torque to all 4 of the bolts, because that's how you get nice even mounting pressure. Because the thing about it is that it's designed to be like, you got the thermal compound. The thermal compound makes the contact better, because what feels like smooth metal to us, if you put it under a microscope at 30 times magnification, it's just ridges and valleys. That's all you see. It's not smooth. What appears to be smooth and what feels smooth to you isn't actually smooth on a microscopic scale. So the thermal paste sort of smooths that out, and what you need is a nice, close, even, firm mount on the CPU, and that will get you better heat dissipation. So it's all about transferring the heat away from the CPU and yeah, providing cooling directly to the CPU. So two functions: moving heat away and actually cooling as well. And so that's obviously the two pipes there, right? So like one is sort of coming off the CPU with hot water, goes through the radiator, comes out cool water on the other end. That's how the cycle works. And yeah, like the water is just the vector, like I say, pretty much every time I try to talk about this, water is just a vector of heat transfer. Is it, people like, but is it more effective than air? And it's like, well, you're asking the wrong question, because they're both cooled by air. What you're asking is water more effective, like set up like this in a liquid cooling setup versus directly mounting a hunk of thermally conductive material directly on top of the CPU, like a air tower cooler with copper heat pipes and all that kind of stuff. And the answer is that it really depends. It really depends how far you want to go. There comes a point where the amount of metal that you have to mount directly to the CPU gets so heavy that it starts to cause problems actually mounting that much weight to the PCB, the motherboard. Right? So that's another reason where liquid cooling becomes superior, because we can have really high velocity fans attached to the radiator. We can have the heat being expelled out of the case and not back into the case, and then we can have a really high powered pump on the CPU as well to make sure there's a lot of circulation. So we can do a lot of things with liquid coolers to push the boundaries of CPU cooling a little bit further than what we can with the maximum we can do with air. It's not that there's like anything wrong with an air cooler. You can get really high performance air coolers as well, and they're fine for most people. Yeah. Yeah, no worries, man. Not a problem at all. Yeah, so yeah, if you're after the 10K setup, so that was a Threadripper, so AMD's high-end desktop platform.
2000 watt power supply?
Yeah, it was. We had a 2000 watt power supply because we're going to be using multiple GPUs. Because when we go Threadripper, we've got 48 PCIe lanes, so we can plug in like 3 graphics cards and use them to their full potential all at the same time, and the CPU can handle all that because it's a high-end desktop platform. Yeah, the idea was, anyway, I got sidetracked talking about tobacco fucking stalls at trade shows. But this dude, he runs events like that, and what his thing was, so he can project 5 screens in 360-degree view, like on the walls around where below there'll be like people set up at a trade show. So he can have all sorts of advertising, and basically the idea is that he's going to sell advertising space on the projectors, and obviously that'll pay for his computer. Like, he had a commercial purpose for it and stuff. And yeah, we had a few random problems, and I helped him out where I could. There was limits to what I could do because he was using software that I didn't supply him and stuff like that. So he came to me with an idea of something that he wanted to do. I just helped him get the computer and put it together and all that kind of stuff. So that was probably that would have been the most expensive, but that was because it wasn't just a normal average person's computer at home for gaming, or even just ordinary small business, to be honest, because the prices for high-end desktops and stuff, like to give you an example, it's like a $2,000 CPU, $1,600 motherboard, and yeah, and then that's just your CPU and your motherboard.
And then we had to find a case that was easily like for him to like carry around and stuff.
Yeah, it was like there was a lot of parts to it, but anyway, we got there in the end. Okay, so we have our CPU, radiator, and cooler all mounted there. And so these cables are the RGB and fan cables. These go out the back into a controller. You can't get away with no controller with a Corsair cooler, unless you've got the one that doesn't have RGB on it. But they give you this Corsair Commander Pro hub. It's got 6 fans and 6 Corsair RGB 4-pin devices, and these normally go for like $80 or so, like if you wanted to buy one in the shops, but they just chuck these in with their coolers, so you pay a little bit more for them, but I mean at least they give you like good stuff like that comes in handy. However, we've already got a RGB and fan controller in here, and that'll control these 3 fans. We can hook that up to the motherboard, so these fans will you can control the lighting on them with software, same as all the Corsair fans. But see, the Corsair ones, they are the more high-end ones. You can do more with the RGB on Corsair than what you can with just regular RGB. So you pay a bit more for it, but the quality's there. And if you want to look at like fans and stuff like that, just have a quick look at which ones are 1-year warranty, which is the minimum that's 1-year warranty on an item like a fan here. That is basically the price of admission under Australian consumer law. I've had to freaking study Australian consumer law, right? And basically, you have to make sure goods are reasonably durable is the phrasing, I believe. I mean, I'm pretty rusty, I haven't done it for years. But basically, you have to make sure your product is not a complete piece of shit and at least lasts for, usually it's 12 months, but the phrase reasonably durable changes when it comes to different things. So like, for example, a car, 12 months isn't going to cut it for like a $30,000 new car. If your fucking transmission dies in like 18 months, even if it was slightly over the like warranty kilometers, under consumer law, that you could probably make a case that 18 months and like just getting over the warranty kilometers wasn't exactly reasonably durable for that, and not on that part, and you could probably make the case for a refund or replacement for that. Like, people don't know all this sort of stuff, but yeah, if you look into the laws there, companies can't just sell absolute pieces of shit. And so what that means is when you see a 12-month warranty on something, don't go, oh, that's good. At least they've made it so it's got a 12-month warranty. Sweet. That's the minimum that they have to offer, basically, under Australian consumer law. Unless it's something that obviously doesn't last for 12 months, Like, you don't have to make like a scrubbing brush last with a 12-month warranty. That's not how it works. The phrase is reasonably durable. But yes, Corsair fans have a 2-year warranty. So that's one good thing. That's one good thing there, because that's them going basically, well, we'll double the guarantee on this item even though, you know, they're obviously pretty confident that even if you're running these things on high, they'll at least last 2 years before they start to die. And that's more than most companies will warrant their fans for. So a lot of the time, if I'm selling like a cheaper case, cheaper fans, like for example, these fans in this case, they only have a 12-month warranty, the ones that come with the case. So we didn't change them because RGB I don't think was a huge issue to Shane. It was just nice to have a little bit of stuff. Yeah.
So let's pretend someone's an avid gamer for a red hot minute. Which 3080 GPU would he buy?
Oh,
He had
oh, that's
12
easy.
12700K and MSI Tomahawk 690.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I love it. I love the motherboard. I love the CPU. If you don't need the onboard graphics, don't pay too much extra for the K, because the only difference between the K and the KF is it's the die that has the onboard GPU, and the onboard GPU doesn't help your main GPU, if that makes sense. Like, it doesn't make your 3080 Ti go any better. And obviously, man, gamer hat on here, gamer hat on. There's only one option there for the graphics card that I'd recommend, and it's the Ti version of my graphics card, and that is the Asus ROG Strix RTX 3080 Ti OC. That's what you want. That's what you want. Pretty much you go and ask 10 gamers, 8 of them will be like, yeah man, get the ROG Strix TIOC, yeah.
It's so good.
Like the reason is Asus likes to flex, and they would have binned only the best to be their ROG Strix cards. That's why they cost a bit more and stuff, but there's a concept called binning with computers, or with not so much with computers, but with silicon products, so like GPUs and CPUs basically. So when they make them when they cut them out from the silicon wafer, right? The first thing that they do is they test them to make sure that they actually freaking work, right? And what they do then is they rank them. They do a test on them, and basically they'll work out which ones are the best group, medium group, small group, etc. They've probably got more groups than that they do. But anyway, essentially the best examples of a particular GPU or CPU, they become the highest level for that CPU. So like, what I mean is the GPU that's in the 3080 and the 3080 Ti and the 3090, that's called a GA102. So I'm going to call it a GA102 from now on. What they do is they'll get the GA102s, they'll test them, and basically there's a form of binning, and basically the best ones, the best GA102 GPUs, they're going to put them with 3090, they're going to clock them higher, and they're going to do everything that they can to make that the best example of what it is, right? They're the ones that become the 3090. Then they check out the average GA102 chip, they'll just become the 3080s. And then they'll work out that there's another little chip there in the middle there, the 3080 Ti. They're probably a smaller group of more mid-range binned chips. This is just to give you an idea. This isn't fact on GA102s. I'm just explaining the sort of concept of binning and how it works. So they try to make all of the one GPU. They do, but then they don't all come out as good as each other. Some of them get hotter quicker and blah, 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 blah. So some of them end up becoming cheaper versions. And then as you get higher and higher and higher, you get better and better and better. So with ROG Strix, they've always got the best freaking examples of a GA102. So when you're buying that ROG Strix 3080 Ti, you're gonna see on the benchmarks, you're gonna, and in real world, you're gonna see a higher, more consistent frame rate. Blah 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 blah. You're gonna see a better one than the tough gaming. You're gonna see a better one than the Aorus. Usually, you know, you could get lucky. That's the thing. There's a concept called silicon lottery. So you don't necessarily know how good an example of your card you're going to get. You might win the lottery and might get one of the top 0.001% examples of a 3080 Ti, and you might get, you might run the benchmarks and see that you're like up there with the best in the world and be like, wow, what's going on there? And then your friend could have the exact same card and just not do as good. Anyway, Christine said I'm talking too much.
Cool. Well, people are chatting away in the comments and you just keep blabbering on.
Yeah, well.
There's fun facts too over here.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to make it as informative as possible because people like these ones. People like these ones that like the 3090s and the 3080s, etc. And so yeah, the thing is, for price performance, 3080 is the winning example, right? But what have you got to say?
Oh, I don't. No, keep going what you were saying.
No, you got me to stop now. You got me to stop. I'm now undoing all these cable ties around here. I'm just going to neaten this up a little bit.
Okay. Female says, given Englishman's toothbrush 12-year warranty. He says I got the K version while I wait for the cheap prices to drop.
Ah, fair enough. Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, you picked wisely in that regard.
California says they're the best. I've been looking for 3080 Ti strips for myself.
Yeah, absolutely, man. You really can't go wrong, especially if you want it like for gaming. They've made sure they want their reputation to be the best for gaming. That they're banking on it, right? They're banking on it like Toyota's banking on their reputation as being reliable. Yeah, they want people to talk about it and stuff like that.
So,
Yeah.
Anthony says,
Hey man, how you going?
and everyone says keep talking to me, we love your input. Says fascinating insight into the composition and hierarchy of GPUs.
Yeah. Well, I think it's pretty interesting, and I certainly think it's a point that people should definitely like take note of and understand that when they're like understanding the differences between like the different products that are on the market. Because they try, like the marketers, see what the actual engineers that design this stuff want to achieve and what the marketing team want to achieve. They can be two completely different things, right? The engineering team might be like focused on making really good products and stuff like that. The marketing team will get a hold of it and be like, how do we capitalize on this and market it in such a way that we maximize the return on investment? That'll be how they look at it. That's all that they're concerned about, is how to increase the number of units that they sell. And that can lead to confusing things. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about things like the RTX 3060 Ti. So you might ask, what's confusing about that? The confusing thing is people think that the 3060 Ti is a more powerful version of the 3060. Makes sense, right? It's called the 3060 Ti. Of course it's a more powerful version of the 3060. What are you talking about? No. Remember we were talking about the GA102 before, which is the GPU they put in the 3080 and the 3090 and stuff? Well, the GPU that goes in the 3060, it's called a GA106. the one they put in the 3060 Ti is the same that goes in the 3070 and the 3070 Ti. It's called the GA104. So the marketers will have you thinking that the 3060 Ti, because it's the best price performance one, isn't as good as 3070 and 3070 Ti, when it's basically just the binned GPUs that weren't quite good enough to be 3070s and 3070 Ti's. They're the ones that are 3060 Ti's. So it's not a better version of the 3060. It's a slightly lower version than the 3070, but like 93% of the performance of a 3070. Yeah, and they are a lot cheaper in price for a long time. So that's been a big thing where the marketers try to deceive the customers, and that you could argue against me and say, but what else are they going to call it? Blah 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 blah. And it's like, well, you know, maybe they should have thought about that and made some sort of, you know, a bit more of an effort to differentiate 3060 from everything else. Maybe they should have moved that number down or something like that. So you had 3060, 3070 and 3070 Ti as the GA104 chips, and then, you know, 3050 and maybe 3040 or something like that be the same as 3060 and 3050 is now. I don't know, but you could sit down and make it more understandable for consumers, but they don't do that. They don't give a fuck about that. All they care about is selling more, right? That's the name of the game. Alright, so I've spoken a fair bit about all this stuff, and I will get to the power supply, but I'm going to point out here, so we've got a hard drive tray in here that we can install a 3.5-inch drive to. In addition to that, this actual hard drive tray itself, if you put your PC on the side here, you've got 2 bolts here and here, and you can see the little clips that it sits on. So that just slides out, and if you pull the actual whole tray out, you can actually mount a second 3.5-inch hard drive directly on top of the chassis that this little tray sits in. So that's pretty cool. There's also room for another 3.5-inch drive up here, but I think we're going to put our Corsair Commander Pro up here. So we might not actually have that. So you might only have just the 2 extra hard drives that you can put in, but then you can still put in 1, 2, 3 extra SATA SSDs if you wanted to. And you've got another 2 M2 slots on your motherboard for another 2 M2 SSDs. So you got absolutely plenty of storage options.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does the same process apply with the CPU chips as well?
Yes, exactly the same thing. Exactly the same thing. So, like, you know, the best become the K series in the Intels. You know, when they make what's important is on the wafer. What's fundamental is they make CPUs with core and thread counts, and onboard graphics and no onboard graphics. So if you see a different chip from a manufacturer, and you see a whole heap of different chip numbers, but they all say like 8 cores, 16 threads, and the generation that they're from is the same, you're looking at binning. So the best ones are the best examples of that. They are clocked higher from factory, so that when you plug them in, they've got more performance. And that's because they run cooler under load and stuff like that. They do all these tests. That's the binning process. And so every CPU and GPU they make is different, and there's the process will be different. Some chips that they make have like a really high percentage that turn out really good, so then they don't make as many different SKUs, but then that's not the only reason they might not make a lot of SKUs. Another reason is they might just want to screw people. But, you know, like look, I'm just being real, okay? Like, yeah.
Your labels is outstanding. Keep it up with GPU.
Well, yeah, I mean, understanding the binning thing is important when you're trying to wrap your head around like what is the best sort of bang for my buck, because not everyone who's building a PC is concerned about necessarily achieving like the highest possible benchmark results or performance and stuff like that. Most people are just chasing good performance at a reasonable price. They don't necessarily want to spend shitloads. So a lot of people are sort of chasing that sweet spot, and that's where understanding a lot of this nerdy shit comes into play. Because if it's like if you're after something high end, that's sweet. I mean, there's nothing wrong with wanting something high end. But like if you're on a budget, which like the majority of the market is on some sort of a budget there, so the majority of people need to know this sort of stuff.
Yeah, speaking of budgets, John said, hi Tim, what specs would you recommend for a budget build under 1K?
Under 1K, oh man, there's not really too much going on. Just over 1K. I mean, you've got entry level gaming PCs like with Ryzen 5600G, or I mean, I guess realistically, you either go with something for just over $1,000 with like a 5600G with a decent power supply, so you can add a graphics card in time, or you spend a little bit more and maybe get, I mean, it's not the greatest card, it doesn't have the best reviews online, but price performance wise and compared to the other options that are available new right now at Australian retailers, the 6500 XT is a better option than say GTX 1650. Yeah, I mean, up to 1.5K, I mean, you're talking 2060, 3050 graphics card if you push it up to that. And that's definitely a much better sort of entry level gaming PC in this day and age. Because like, to give you an idea, now that graphics card prices have dropped, the market has now essentially dropped by $500. Yay! What I mean by that is the average person who wants a PC, who gets a quote for a PC, they are after a PC between $1,500 and $3,000 dues. Okay, so that's what you consider right now in Australia in 2022 to be the mid-range. Okay, so that's where the bulk of the market is buying in. So above that is like high end these days, because going over $3,000, you're starting to get into 3080 territory with like, not with a i9 12900K and all the other stuff, but you'll get like a more basic system with a Ryzen 5600X or something like that. At that sort of price. So that's the start of the high end these days. And even just 8 months ago, it was pretty hard to put together a RTX 3080 build that like you'd want to actually put your name to. That wasn't bottleneck to all shit essentially. That was under $4,000 reasonably, unless you're ripping yourself off in terms of the labor that you were charging people for the PC. And I mean, like there are people out there that basically work for free, but you get what you pay for, eh? That's the thing. You can go through some random on marketplace, but then if anything goes wrong with that, you won't have someone that you can call up and go, hey, oh man, my blah blah blah's died. Can I send it back to you and you get a warranty replacement for me? And I'll just go, yeah man, send it back. Drop it back. I'll get a new part for you, install it, and send the other one back for warranty. That's the peace of mind that you kind of pay for, right? Yeah.
Are we starting to see a drop in DDR5 memory prices too? Are these systems becoming more
Oh, it's still really high, man. It's still really high, and the problem is like there are some cheaper kits that are coming down, but like they're very basic. They don't have RGB and stuff like that. So right now for a lot of people, and see the thing is right, this is the killer, right? And this is the thing why you might see me and a whole heap of other PC places not really advertising too much DDR5. And the reason is because we all know from the industry and just from history, right? If you go and look at the first generation of DDR4 and the sorts of speeds and latencies that they were sitting at, and you go calculate and see where that was at, and then you compare that with the average DDR4 XMP profiles that are being used, and especially with like the designated sweet spot for DDR4, which is 3600C16. So like if you compare the performance that you get at that kind of level with the performance you're getting at DDR5 at the current levels, it's only like the really expensive kits that sort of got like a decent little bit of a performance gain. The others are very, very, very similar, and it doesn't make a lot of sense at this stage to jump onto it. But, I'm hoping that probably by next year or something like that, we're going to start to see some improved speeds and latencies coming from DDR5 as they start producing more of it, and they start refining it slightly and stuff, just like the speed and latency of DDR4 got better after a couple of years of it being on the market. The same thing I predict will happen with DDR5. So at the moment, I'm not really suggesting it to anyone unless they want DDR5 specifically. I'm sort of saying, look, there's not really a great deal of point right now. Like, the thing about it is you might see that the memory speeds are way higher, but the other thing to bear in mind is the CAS latency, the CL. The CAS latency is more than doubled. So that means that it doesn't matter that the speed is double because the latency's twice as much. So those two things are intertwined, and one takes away from the other. So that's the thing that people need to sort of understand there with all this. Alrighty, so we've got our power supply all set here. Yeah. Yeah, no worries. So yeah, I'm sort of saying to people right now, at least for the next year or so, probably just get, if you want to spend a bit more on your memory, go and get yourself some DDR4 3600C16. That is it's more expensive than 3200 C16 and 3600C18. Both of those are pretty much the same because the obviously the 3600's faster in megahertz than the 3200, but the CAS latency is increased by 2, so that offsets that. So essentially DDR4 3600 C18 and 3200 C16, they're pretty much tit for tat, and in little tests one will be like very slightly ahead of the other, one will be very slightly ahead of the other in different workloads. But you can think of them as kind of the same, and then the absolute best you can possibly get from DDR4 is 3600 C16, and you'll normally pay about $50 extra per stick to get 3600 C16 versus 3200 C16 or 3600 C18. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, it's a little bit, it's a bit confusing at first when you're trying to get your head around it, I guess, but you don't have to be a total expert. I mean, you just need to know that there's speed and then there's latency, and then the two things are completely intertwined with each other, so you can't really have good speed without decent latency, and not much point having good latency if the speed's really slow. Go look at some DDR3 latencies compared to DDR4. They've all got better latencies, but the speed's way lower as well. Sweet as. And a couple of spare cables there. I'm just going to stick them underneath everything else there. Hook up our cooler last. Alright, so I think we had an I/O shield here. We need to get that on the case here. Gotta be a little bit careful with these things. I have actually sliced my finger right open on a bit of metal doing this once.
Yeah.
I've only ever done it once my whole life. I did it live.
I know, I was just going to say you did it live too.
Yeah, how good's that? That's awesome. I love that got captured live. That's like
It's
a cool.
one of your early videos.
Yes, I couldn't tell you which one it is, but
No.
I didn't catalogue it as the one where I cut my finger. If you ever watch that, maybe send me a link. Okay. So we should be all looking good, ready to get our motherboard in the case now. Yeah. Yeah.
In case you recommend for a 3080 Ti Ryzen 9 5900X.
Oh man, like, go like a Leon Lee Dynamic 11. Fit it out with like the 360mm radiator plus the other 6 fans. You do a Leon Lee Dynamic 11, you gotta orientate the fans correctly. You want a radiator to the top, ideally. The 3 fans there blowing air out, and then 3 fans drawing in cool air from the base. That's what you want for a Leon Lee Dynamic 11. That's like how they that's how they perform the best thermally, basically. So let me drag this over the edge of the Lazy Susan.
You probably want to get some fans that actually move quite a bit of air as well.
For what? Sorry, babe.
5100X. They run hot.
No, 5900X runs fine, especially if you're just gaming and stuff like that. It's not like it's like, well, I mean yours doesn't. You've got a 5950, and we put it to work, and it's not like overly hot. It's tuned right. The only one they had problems with was the 5800X, which was just a toasty boy, man. I've spoken to Radium computers. I've spoken to Synex computers or Sysnex computers. I've spoken to Cataclysm. I've spoken to a lot of guys, right? And we all agree that the 5800X out of all of the Ryzen 5000 chips is the only one we've had issues with. One guy down in Sydney, he does a few the custom loops for people and stuff like that. I normally try to talk people out of them because they're fucking pain in the ass. Not to build, to maintain and stuff like that. But yeah, basically, he had a guy who was like adamant that the custom loop is going to solve all his problems with his overheating, as he said, 5800X. He spent like $2,000 on this custom loop, like getting installed into his case and all this other shit done. And yeah, it made like 2-3 degrees difference compared to the other cooler that he had and stuff. It was like, oh shit. Yeah, 59's fine. Not 58. I'm talking about 58 here, and that's the only one that really has a problem.
I don't have hardware on my
Yeah, you do. It's part of CPU ID. So if you go into hardware monitor is part of.
I was looking for
It is a separate app, but because it's developed and owned by the same people who own the CPU-Z app. It's the same group. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, they are a non-profit organisation. They run with like they make some money, but they don't make like a lot of money. They make enough to like, you know, make their updates and stuff like that. But it's not like a big company like that, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, because there's quite a few little tech pieces of software and stuff like that that are set up like that. What do they call it in America? Is that... I don't want to start quoting American fucking laws. Sound like an idiot if I'm getting it wrong. I want to say, are they like, is it called like a 501c3 non-profit organization or something like that? It's something like that. Yeah, well, I mean, if you set it up in the orientation that I mentioned, and yeah, you should be fine. You should have a heap of airflow through the case. Oh, you can. I'll show you how to do that. But like I said, I don't have a big following on YouTube, so I don't normally...
No, I meant like in the feed.
Oh, in the feed. I don't think you can in the chat feed.
That's a bit shit.
There may be an option to turn that on.
I don't know. There is. Please tell me.
So now that we've got our radiator in place...
I'm going to post it in the chat on Facebook and stuff. I can do that.
Okay. There we go. We have our board in the case. I've just got a couple of other screws to tighten down here quickly. But yes, this bottom M2 SSD that we can see there, we won't see it when the graphics card's plugged into it. So you'll have that top slot there that's accessible, and then the two slots below it there. Oh no, wait, the top slot's got an SSD in it. Don't mind me. You'll have these two slots at the bottom there that'll be accessible. And do we need some screws for them? I'm going to go ahead and put in a couple of screws.
That's silly, but I can't like add photos to the comments and screenshots of things. I don't like that. Facebook and YouTube.
They should have an admin function where the admins can.
Yeah, nobody
I
else
don't-
can, but I can.
Yeah, I think it's been turned off for obvious reasons. I think.
Yeah, I guess. But
No, that's all
oh,
right.
now Facebook is trying to show me community standards.
Oh, really?
Oh, jeez. It's just a screenshot of hardware monitors. It's no dick pic. Oh, God.
What are you getting me a freaking community standards violation over there, babe?
No.
I don't want a community standards violation.
No, at the bottom of the comments, it just says that highlights community. It's don't worry. There's no strike against you. All right.
Alrighty, that's... Oh, no. Still one sneaky bolt.
Two. Babe,
Yeah.
Ian also says he has the 1100 DXL.
Ah, yep.
With 10 fans that are
Yep.
super cool. Exhaust at the top.
Yep.
Out of the air.
Yep.
AIO and the rear also is exhaust.
Yep.
Take side and bottom.
Yep. Yeah, you can the one on the side, you can kind of go either way depending on how you want to configure it. Makes very little difference. The main thing is you've got the 3 on the bottom and 3 on the top. Just with those 3 alone, it'll be decent. The others are almost just there for show. Fundamentally, that's what they designed, and then they added the others just as spot fillers, basically. Okay, what have we got? So we're gonna need at least one SATA cable, sorry, SATA data cable. So for this RGB and fan controller here, and just going to tuck that away. Down there, and we should have one spare SATA power connector there for our Commander Pro that came with our cooler. So I'm going to deal with the Commander Pro very last because it's easier to plug everything in with it out and then I stick it down than trying to get my hands around there. Stay up here with the rest of it. Alrighty. So these CPU cables, just like I did last night. Just tuck them away in that lip there. They'll hold in place and stay out of the way of everything else. And then because we got room for it, the front panel audio can just go straight down here and down the bottom.
Is that the bottom of your screwdriver?
Yep, sure is. You know the story of my lifetime warranty screwdriver?
Where's the other one?
I don't know where my other one is. I'm as devastated as you.
Do I need to buy you a new one for your birthday?
Possibly. Been let down by the brand. May as well just buy some random Chinese brand.
You might have better luck.
China's
They're
invested big with
working
they're
really
working
hard to
really
have
hard on their made in China thing.
Yeah.
It's to make, some people don't know this, China as an economy, right? They're very much aware that they're basically the world's manufacturing nation. They build everything for the world. But they're also aware that the made in China logo is sometimes like not necessarily a sign of quality in the eyes of consumers around the world. They're investing big bucks into like trying to raise the quality of Chinese made goods. They want the made in China label to be like, I think they said like the symbol of like high quality goods being manufactured in the world. So that's what they are focused. That's what they are focused on. Because like a socialist, communist, dictatorship sort of nation, right? You got one party rule. So like yeah, I guess when they decide they want to do something, they do it a bit more seriously than when it's not like if Joe Biden or Trump or something said they were going to do something. I think that the Chinese are going to take it way more seriously when they come out and say they're doing something. So yeah, like I would expect better quality stuff in the future based on that.
Yeah. They're they go on together. You can't turn one or the other off.
Well, that one turns off by itself. You don't even really like.
What, outside?
No, inside. That one turns off up here.
No, I turn it off.
You know you don't have them like there.
Yeah.
Yeah, you turn them up. Let the others run down.
Mm.
You want to still like this one?
Yeah.
Thanks.
so this one up here that we're looking in is the RGB controls for the fans on the front of our case. Everything else will be controlled by Corsair IQ. So these ones here are our front panel connections. So like the power and reset switch and stuff. So this is actually something that a lot of people kind of fuck up. You've got these tiny little 2-pin connectors. And there's writing on one end and nothing on the other. And you have to get out and read the circuit diagram if you're unfamiliar to tell which way it all plugs in. I mean, I'll sometimes get someone who's like built a PC and they're like, oh, it won't turn on, something's wrong, and it will just be something as simple as that. But with some of the connectors, if you don't have them on the right way, obviously they're just 2-pin connectors, you could put them on either way. You reverse the polarity, and while nothing's going to melt on you, what'll happen is stuff like the hard drive light will be on whenever the hard drive's not doing anything, and off whenever it is. And like the power button, the light for power LED, that could be potentially on all the time when your PC's off, and then only turn off when you turn it on. That's what reversing the polarity there will do. So that can be a bit of a pain. Alrighty, so we've just got our basically now we've just got our graphics card, motherboard, and our Commander Pro. So we might look at so it's basically going to fit in that spot there where there's room to mount another 3.5-inch drive. And so we got 4 fans and 4 RGB cables to hook up to this. Then we've got a SATA power cable, and then we've got a USB 2 header that's got to be run to the header on the motherboard. So a little bit of fun stuff to set up our Corsair RGB there, but yeah, it's cool. It's cool. No one ever gets the Corsair and goes, oh man, wish I didn't get this. I wish I just got the normal shitty one. Like, no one ever says that, right? Okay. So let me get some fan cables and fan cables only here. Okay, so we've got 4 fan cables. And so these 4 can just go into our controller. One, two, three, and 4. This little one can just go to the CPU header on the motherboard. Just enough room for that. That's the sensor for our pump. Okay, so that's our fan cables, and then we've just got the RGB. And so we got room for another couple of Corsair fans, but if we wanted to replace the front fans with Corsair ones, buy the one with the extra controller, because you've only got room for 2 more Corsair fans on this controller. Okay, so now we got all those thin cables plugged in there. We've also got this one here, so this is the main connection, main power connection for our pump. Yeah, definitely got that in the right way. Yep. Now we can mount that down there. So once again, I'm just going to tuck those excess cables away up to the side. And our fans. So we'll just tie these few fan cables down here, just because it's getting a little bit busy up the top corner there. Don't do that, don't use a knife. So they'll be fine to sit around like that. And now we just got the cables for our actual controller. So as I said, we've got 2 cables here. One is just our SATA power, so we can plug that in. And can we just tuck that away there? I think we can. So some people go to town manicuring the cables out the back. I don't do it because as soon as you need to make a repair or do anything with it, you've got 10,000 cables to cut out and put back together. Believe me, you'll do it once to your own computer, and then as soon as you have a problem, you'll be like, oh shit. Okay, that's all looking pretty good. So we've got our motherboard power, main power for everything else on our board other than our CPU. Go ahead and plug that in. And it did have this little guy. Sweet as. Just got our graphics card. So here it is. Some people are like, isn't the Eagle like the cheap one? The thing is, when you're talking 3080s, there's no like shit, like from the big brands. There's no like shit 3080. They can't make a 3080 that's not like at least half decent. So I've seen some Gigabyte Eagle 3060 Ti's that run a little bit toasty in my opinion. But I've never had a problem with a 3080 one. They're generally good value. They're actually one of the first ones that sell out. So I think people are onto it. Got a whole heap of sticky over this. Good bastards.
They love the sticky.
They've been getting better. I'm getting better. They didn't put it over the back panel, but I guarantee they put it over the fan logos. Yep.
Babe,
Yeah.
it was a little while ago, but John said it's today today.
Hey John, sorry missed you. Alrighty, so there it is. We've got 5 display outputs on the back.
I'm not sure what this is in relation to, but John says, yes, I popped them off on my wife's PC. I worked it out after an hour. She wasn't happy. About 10 minutes ago.
What were we talking about 10 minutes ago?
I don't know. Fans? No?
Possibly, yeah.
Cooler?
We were talking about fans.
Add moderator over here.
Yeah, I know.
I'm sorry.
You could get better.
This,
Are you getting better?
I think so. Maybe not.
Getting better. And yes, that's a Monty Python reference.
You didn't realise.
Yes. No. Just looks like it's potentially got more sticky all over it.
Oh, John says the front power pins
Oh, yep, the power pins. Yep, that'll fucking do it. You'll be swearing at the case and then you'll be like, oh shit. Stupid case doesn't fucking work. Oh. Okay. Our graphics card keys. So I'm going to run them up the top here. So I like to try to keep the bottom nice and clean. Sweet as. So I'll just chuck a couple of cable ties just around those ends there. But we should be pretty much good to go. Ready to fire her up and have a play around with some 12900K goodness. It's even better than my PC. I've only got a 12700KF. Oh no, how will I ever survive with fucking mad as shit CPU as far as I'm concerned? Huh?
I said you're a pauper.
I know, right? No, I was interested to see where the 700 sat, because all the reviews at first were all on the 900. So I was more curious on the 700, and I figured the 700 is probably going to be more than what I need in my PC, realistically. And so yeah, I just went with the 700. I do try to upgrade when there is a new generation, just to get a bit of an idea, a bit of a feel for it personally. Sweet as. Well, that is one gaming PC. And whatever the hell else you want to do. 3D modeling, video editing, photo editing, office workstation. It's whatever you want it to be, man. That's the beauty of having a 3080 and a CPU like that. You can do whatever you want to do. Alrighty, so we'll chuck some power in. I'll get Christine to share the screen when she wants to stop playing with the cat.
Sorry.
Keyboard and mouse. And last but not least, our display cable. Power on. Now, moment of truth. Does it all work? Has Tim made a mistake? What's going on? Don't worry about that. It's the Corsair controller turning on for the first time. Alrighty, so we got the screen share, babe?
Yeah.
Yep. Sweet as. Okay. So what version do we have on here? Oh, version 1. It's been a while. I might get a new version of BIOS there. I will just chuck XMP on while I'm here. We'll have to put it back on after the BIOS update, but that's okay. Yes, that is all looking sweet. So just wait for it to memory train after we applied the XMP profile. I'll screw in these Wi-Fi antennae. Oh, it might also help if I plug in a Windows installation USB. What am I doing? Only I know. Alright. Let's get this sorted. I'll enter the product key off camera, obviously. Alrighty, so we got drive 0 there. That's where we're going to install Windows. They're both the same drive, so you don't really have to think too hard about it. Jeez, it didn't give me much time to get some bolts screwed in, did it? It's nearly done.
What are you doing to? 5 miles
It's the 12900K, babe. It's too quick at installing Windows.
Yeah.
It's just too quick.
It's too slow.
There we go. Okay, so we are in Australia, not Austria, Australia. Use the US keyboard layout as a $sign. So I just make a blank user and blank password on all my computers, and you can set up your own Microsoft account, whatever. That way, if it ever asks you for a password that you didn't set, just hit enter with a blank password, because I didn't set any passwords. I had someone call me up all angry because apparently I just set some password on their computer. I'm just like, nah, man, nah, there's no password. If it's asking you for a password, just press enter with a blank password. And he does it. He's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm like, nah, why would I put passwords on people's computers? Like, it doesn't make sense. That, I, why would I want to, like, create problems for people and then have those people call me for support? Doesn't make any sense. So, no issue with the audio yet. Touch wood. Okay, so we're in Windows now. I'm going to plug in a LAN cable and we'll see whether the Ethernet driver is preloaded. So I've plugged in the LAN cable and nothing. We ain't got shit. Well, I guess it doesn't work. We're gonna have to get it refunded or something. Nah, not at all. So, because that's not working and it doesn't recognize the Wi-Fi or the Bluetooth, because it's the Wi-Fi or the Ethernet, I'm gonna plug in this more generic Wi-Fi adapter, and now we're gonna see some networks. So we're gonna get started on this little cheap USB. It's like not actually cheap. It's actually a decent USB Wi-Fi adapter. And so that's going to get us started. That's going to get us some drivers, and then we'll be able to switch over and run off the LAN. It's like 7:46 p.m. Man, I'm quick. I'm real quick. Alrighty. Get all of those drivers, thank you very much. Tidy up some of this clutter down here. Get rid of that Windows Mail app. I'll install Office 365 so we can use a respectable email app. Well, Shane's using it for his business. I'm sure he uses. I assume that people in the business world use Outlook, because 9 times out of 10 that is the case. If they use something else, then that's fine. But like, yeah, Outlook can be a bit intimidating for some people if you're new, but it's really good once you get to know it and can use it to its full potential. Okay, so we can unplug our Wi-Fi now because obviously we have we're connected via Ethernet. We should start to see some updates coming through with these. The main one I want to update is just Microsoft Store. Okay. No. Install all of our gaming clients. Chrome, CPU-Z, Crystal Disk, Info, Mark. I don't need this MSI, I'm going to download Cinebench for our stress test. MSI Center for our motherboard. Oh, done that already. Alright, nearly there. Alright. Okay, no 3080 Ti yet. Okay. Let's not make a mess of the place. There's our 16 core 24 thread i9. We don't have our NVIDIA drivers yet. They're waiting on a restart, it looks like. So I'll turn off all this annoying shit that wants to start up automatically, except for things that are designed to come on in the background and not annoy you. Sweet. Here's our 3080. Okay. So we'll do a reboot now. And this here we're doing drive caching, so Crucial have software that uses the RAM to speed up the SSD a little bit. Only works to a point, doesn't work on really big files and stuff, but like smaller stuff makes it a bit snappier. Yeah.
So they like Shane wants to know once he gets sets up. He wants to know if he's going to give you a call and give us a quick rundown. That's all right.
Yeah, sure. No worries. So most of the stuff that you've seen me install is just useful software that most people either want or is useful to have sitting there in the background.
Let's go first.
Cumulative Windows updates. And these Intel updates. And so yeah, we'll just grab so all this stuff, this is the stuff that would like come on a CD with your motherboard. I don't even think we get CDs in many of these Z690 chipset boards. We might still get one in this one. Yes, we do. Look at that. Retro. So that should be all up to date. A little bit more there. Oh, I needed a BIOS.
You there, Chris?
That's the one. Alrighty, so as we can see here, we've got our one drive, but we don't have our second drive. So we'll quickly go and initialize our second SSD and create a partition. There we go, there's our second SSD. That's looking good, that's looking good. A couple of other things to install there. Oh, we need to flash a BIOS as well. Sweet. Select the one. Be a bit of a head fuck making sense of all those files in there, but yeah, when you know what you're looking for, it's not too bad. So while that's flashing, I might go to the toilet and get a drink. Okay, appears we are back in Windows. We should be all up to date and looking good. And yes, obviously you're compatible with Windows 11, so don't even worry about it. So, audio still isn't fucked up. It's going well tonight. I'm expecting it to fuck up on me. I'm literally expecting it to fuck up on me. Oh, new version of CPU Z, eh? Still running 1.5. Actually, just cut it. There we go. So this is hardware monitor. So if you think your computer's hot, this is what you do to actually check it. Because after you gaming for 4 hours, you might touch it and might think that it feels pretty hot. But it doesn't matter if it feels hot to your hand. What matters is is it overheating in here. And so this app, the values will turn red if there's a problem, basically. But basically if it gets over 90 degrees, that's starting to get warm. 100 degrees is the limit there. But you have an i9 12900K. So that's a flagship CPU. So if you push it hard, it will get hot. That's how they've got it tuned like that, basically. But that's only going to be an issue if you're going to be like rendering videos and stuff like that. In that case, there's an app that was installed here called Intel Extreme Tuning Utility. You can make the clock speed max out at a lower level if you want, because you've got the flagship. It's all it's unlocked and overclockable. They say overclockable, but that also means that it's underclockable as well. So if you're putting it to work and you'll find it's getting a little bit warm for your liking, you might go, oh, maybe I'll limit it to 5 gigahertz instead of 5.1 or something like that. But you can play around and tune it to your liking with that app there. But we're not really concerned about any of that shit today. We're just worried about the out-of-the-box performance and passing the stress test. But first, obviously, we'll have a look at some gaming benchmarks. But I want to quickly run a bench on this and compare it to some other CPUs. Sweet. So off the scale for the multi and 813 for the single. So what does that mean? I'll put these numbers in perspective for people. Alrighty, so single core. So here we go, 12900K and another 12900K. All there's 3 points difference. So we could run this test 10 times and we'll get 817 on one of them. That's just how it goes. KF there, 819. None of that. This difference between them is negligible. If we were to run the test multiple times, we'd get slightly different results, and it will vary within the percentages that these guys actually vary. So don't worry too much about that. You can see some clear tiers here, so you can see the i9 there, a bit above the i7s, and then the i5s here. And these are all the 12th gen, you can tell because they start with 12. So they're all 12th gen. This one here, 11900K, that's the 11th gen. And then Ryzen here, we've got Ryzen 9, 5th gen Ryzen, so it starts with a 5. 11, 5th gen Ryzen, 11, there's a 10, so 10th gen Intel. Alright, and multi-thread. This isn't actually a fair comparison, and neither is the other page, because this CPU doesn't have a direct equivalent with AMD. So compared to a 5950X at multi, the 5950X is still ahead, but it's ahead in single. So single is your gaming performance, multi is like your video rendering performance, basically. But either way, doesn't really matter. Really, really good CPU. Even compared to high-end desktops, you're better than any of Intel's high-end desktops, even at multi-core. So, not as good as the Threadrippers though. The Threadrippers are the peak performance for CPUs. Alrighty, so that's a little bit there about the CPU, but let's run. Well, why did we spike up to 100 there? That's really weird. We shouldn't be spiking to 100 because obviously our cooler's working because we got values here in the 20s, but we shouldn't be spiking to 100. Oh, we are indeed spiking to 100, and that's what I'm saying. Like, we're making good contact, and I can tell from the idle temperatures. But like I was saying, the i9, when you do push it, let me just make sure we do have a nice good contact there. I'm pretty good at applying even pressure. Oh, that's a little bit loose. Oh, we may have had a slight problem there. And so this is why I do the stress tests on all my computers. Oh yeah, that's a little bit loose as well. Oh, I think I know what it is. Yeah, they're the two that I did with my thumb. I didn't tighten them up again, so let's see what difference that makes. Wasn't really making a huge difference there, as you can see. And so what would you do if you wanted to stop it getting like that under load? That's what Extreme Tuning Utility here is for. So you can play around with a lot of stuff here. So what we can do is we can do stuff like this. So when we've got, yeah, so we've got our 8 big cores and our 8 little cores. So we can make it so when it's under extreme load, we can reduce the clock speed slightly. We don't have to change anything else. And let's gauge the impact of that when it's under load. So you don't have to worry about when you're gaming, because you won't be pushing the CPU as hard as when we're doing stress tests. There we go. Oh no, we're still climbing pretty high. We're staying. We're still hitting 100 pretty quickly with that. Let's try a slight undervolt here, and I'll save this settings. No, it doesn't like a slight undervolt. That's fine. That's fine. You can do that if you want. And so yeah, this is what you get with the really high-end CPU that's tuned the way it is from Intel. As you can see, we've got a good CPU cooler. It's functioning properly, and you can see that from the fact that it's dropping down to like below 30 degrees at idle. But the way that they've got this tuned, because they're really desperate to take back that performance crown from AMD, right? The way that they're tuned, they sometimes need a little bit of adjustment for if you really want to bang them on all cores and threads at the same time. So even with that was a really tiny undervolt. That normally will not cause a blue screen. But well, look, honestly, I feel that 4.6 under load here is still going to be pretty bloody good. And I won't adjust any of the voltages. I won't apply an offset, because that was a really small offset there. So that's applied. And let's just see what the sweet spot is. And this comes back to binning as well. How well this individual i9 will actually perform. So as you can see here, this hasn't affected when there's like 1 or 2 cores. It's still getting up to full speed. This is just adjusting the amount, how hard it's going to be working when we're using all cores and all threads at the same time. So that's what we're playing around with here. So I don't stress. Sitting in the 90s now. That's looking a bit better. I think we're pretty much hitting the sweet spot. We've only dropped a tiny fraction in that multi-core performance from this anyway. So I think let's just drop it to 4.5. I think that's reasonable. And what sort of impact does that make? Still running kind of warm. Oh, hang on. We need a firmware update on that cooler as well. Because one thing I noticed, when we were ramping up, our cooler wasn't really ramping up. So we can adjust that with Corsair IQ. And this is the beauty of high-end CPUs. So sometimes it's better if you're doing this yourself and you're not familiar with all this shit that I'm fucking around with. Sometimes it's better not to get the like absolute top tier CPU, right? Because what I would like to see, what I need to see is the pump ramp up and the fans ramp up in accordance with the CPU power and temperature loads. And we weren't seeing that with that, because if I drop it to 4.6 or so on the clocks there, that should be all we need to do for it to sit in like the 80s or so, in my experience with this particular CPU, right? Alright, so we do have a firmware update for it. The cooler is 100% functioning. Sweet, that's all done. That's it's taming it a little bit nicer there. Okay. I think I'm pretty happy with all that. I'm not too concerned about the small cores. I'm not going to play around with that because my experience with my i7 12700KF, other 12900Ks that I've played around with, and the i5 as well. You have to do. There's a lot of basically they've already got these things kind of overclocked as much as they can. There's not a lot of headroom that you can push through these without doing some pretty serious overclocking. And I mean, I even just tried to put a negative voltage offset there, and even a tiny one made a blue screen. Okay, so look, we're still going to be up high on minimum cores, but we're going to drop down when we're doing stuff, more intensive things. Okay, happy days. So let's have a look at some gaming benchmarks now. But before I do that, I might want to set up our on-screen overlay. What GPU one is the correct one. Sweet. Okay. Alrighty, so this number here below RAM is how many frames per second it's currently running at. You'll be able to see what the gaming CPU temperatures are like here compared to when we're banging on all cores and threads at maximum. massive frame rate. So yeah, basically fine for gaming, but if you want to use it for productivity, we gotta like hone it back a little bit, because it's just like that. Put a $270 CPU cooler on it. Still, yeah. But that's because it's tuned for gaming. They're assuming if you buy this for productivity, you know enough to tune it for your workload. Alrighty. So I don't think the CPU got over the 70s or so while we're running that. This one will run Ultra with max anti-aliasing. I might reset the value counter on that. And so you think, oh, is there something wrong with the CPU cooler? But no. These are dropping down below 30 degrees. So that's definitely not a sign of a CPU cooler that's wrong. If the CPU cooler wasn't functioning right now, the CPU would be sitting in the 50s or 60s doing nothing. But that's, like I said, it's not what we're seeing there. Anyway. So we do this one Ultra with max anti-aliasing. Anti-aliasing is like line smoothing. So if you see that setting in game, that's what it's all about. This is a more demanding benchmark and at higher settings. Alrighty, so that was Valley there on ultra settings with max anti-aliasing. And the final one we run, and yes, CPU not overheating at all. So if there was a problem with our cooler or problem with anything like that, we'd be seeing it actually overheating there. I just want to make that clear, because sometimes when someone buys a high-end K-series chip from Intel and it runs hot and requires tuning, they don't know what that's really means. They don't understand that these sort of high-end chips, they come with software to do this sort of thing, and they're aimed at enthusiasts and stuff. So sometimes it's good to have someone like me play around with it first before you get it and go, oh fuck, what's going on? Alright, so the final one, my wife is very keen to show me something. We do it 4K here, so this is 4K gaming performance. So the other two were 1080. They don't look like they have as much flavouring as they used to. Yeah, that's So as you probably noticed, the CPU is not under as much load at 4K because the frame rate's lower. Very good. Alrighty. So now we're on to the final part of the night. It's got the pump up on extreme. What's with dim 1? One's not lit up. Yeah, you got the correct configuration there.
Broken.
No.
Looks like it's probably faulty.
Nah, it's not. It was working fine before.
Oh, well.
It's sometimes with Corsair, you've got to reinstall the firmware. You've got a loading error, error occurred. It's okay. It's not important. It's definitely functioning, and just like Nick's problem Corsair dim the other day, I was able to easily fix it by forcing a firmware update onto it. As we can see here, our memory is definitely all there, all 32 gigabytes. Okay. So now it's time for our stress test. And this is going to generate even more heat. Alrighty. So this stresses our graphics card, and this puts some serious strain on our CPU. And we're straight to 100 with this workload. Will it pull itself back in power consumption? See, what it will do by default, right, is it gets up to 100 degrees there, and see it's always dropping. That's how it's designed. It's designed to never get hotter than 100 degrees. But that's only, I mean, we've limited it there. We're still getting heat because it's just got too much. It's just got so much power running through it under a workload like this. So what would be an appropriate speed for that to run at? If you wanted to sit it there, banging on all cores for like 4 hours, what would be a good setting to run at, so it's not just sitting there at 100 degrees? You don't want that. That's just putting strain on everything. Okay, so that was getting to 91 after a small amount of load. No, straight to 100C under load there. So I might actually have to play around and thermal throttling. We just got too much juice running through it. Yeah, we'll have to have a bit of a play around with this tomorrow before we ship it off. Nope. Yeah, like I said, I might even um, I might even look at a saving in an undervolt profile that'll be good for if you want to do video editing or any of that, and then to get the best performance out of it, which is basically how it's tuned out of the box. For gaming, just leave it as it is for gaming. But I want to make sure that if you want to do something like video editing and you are going to be using the CPU all cores, all threads for a while, I want to make sure that the thing's not just sitting there going to 100 degrees for you and stuff. I want to make sure that it's, going to settle in the 80s or something like that, something reasonable. What do you mean there's a new version of XTU? But yes, other than our tuning for a multi-core workload under extreme stress. This is all good. I will do that. I will fix up that random Corsair dim that's decided to stuff up on us. That wants a restart. Okay, I'll do Corsair first. Loading error. Same shit as before, okay. Well, let me restart and we'll at least finish up on that. And yeah, we'll just work out some decent underclock settings for this. I'm gonna have a bit of a play around. And then we'll get that profile saved in there. But then, like, for normal use, it's never gonna like overheat or anything like that. It's only when we're doing these kind of tests, or if you ever do video editing or stuff like that. Okay. Yep, there it goes. Sweet, well, I can't really do my normal stress test until I have some appropriate settings to run the 12900K on. It's so funny, we're talking about binning and all that, just tonight we were talking about that and how some of them run hotter. And look, I get to show you an example of exactly that. Alright, so there's our RAM all fixed up, all 4 DIMMs are illuminated. Yeah, actually the thermal velocity boost settings there will be good. Yeah, this does have a few updates. Yeah. Yeah, sweet. Voltage offset per core. Performance core. Yeah, sweet, sweet. That's just what we need. So I'll have a play around with that later tonight, tomorrow morning, and then yeah, when I've got a good when I've got a good undervolt there for it. Something that's appropriate for, like I said, using this for video editing and stuff. We'll get that loaded, and then we'll carry on from there, I think. So alrighty, so thanks everyone for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll catch you all in the next video.